Hello everyone, welcome into MLS Digest. Leagues Cup is back for 2025 with a fully revamped format with the 18 total Liga MX clubs facing off against the top 18 of the 30 total MLS clubs in this summer's edition. And it'll be solely cross-league battles through this first phase and for most of the knockouts, at least the first round, with the only possibility of teams from the same league facing off against each other in the late knockout stages. So in years past, we saw a lot of inconsequential matchups between teams from the same leagues in the group stages, and that kind of drew away interest from the tournament itself, which is already competing with so many other tournaments on the continent and just in general that these teams from these leagues have to play. I think this is a beneficial change. It'll help this tournament feel a little bit less bogged down and progress faster for the average fan. I think the games will be very constant, at least through this first phase. And then even though it is a month long in total, you have almost about a 2-week gap between the first phase and the knockout stage, which will begin from the quarterfinal round. So I'll get into everything you need to know as far as how this format works in the first phase and how teams can qualify to the knockouts, because it is a little bit nuanced. But please first make sure to like this video down below and subscribe to the channel if you're new here. We're approaching 500 subscribers, and I'd love to hit that goal during Leagues Cup and help continue to grow the channel. So phase one, or the group stage as we can call it, is going to be across about 10 days here, and it's going to go fast. Each team has 3 matches it'll play against all opposition from the opposite league. So for the Columbus Crew, they'll face Toluca, Puebla, and Club León, and so on and so forth. And each league will have its own table that it's competing against. So even though each league is competing against 3 teams from the other league, it's competing within all the teams from its league in a table to advance to the knockout round. So, for example, the Crew could do far better than a lot of Liga MX teams, but get 5th out of the MLS teams, and they will not advance to the knockout rounds because it will only be the top 4 teams from MLS and top 4 teams from Liga MX advancing to the quarterfinals, where in those quarterfinals, it'll be, once again, MLS teams facing Liga MX teams, and then depending on who advances in the quarterfinals, that the semis and the final is the only time we'll ever see potentially 2 teams from either Liga MX or 2 teams from MLS facing off against each other. So teams will have a game about every 3 days in this first phase, and then they'll have a pretty decent break before we pick up in the knockout rounds. But once again, there's really no room to slip up because you have to be top 4 out of 18 of an 18-team table. And, really, if you drop any points, it's going to be very, very hard for you to progress because you get 3 points for a win, you get 1 point for a draw, of course, and these games will go straight to penalties after, just like previous editions. And if you win in penalties after that draw, you'll get an additional point, so 2 total points for a win on penalties. So from the first moment, from the first game, it's going to be very clear potentially which teams are really going for it, which teams really have a true chance at progressing, and which teams are going to flop out because it's almost like one slip up and you're out in this case. So there are a lot of really even matchups, and that will either lend itself to me to some very tense situations as far as maybe pushing themselves a little bit more than they'd like to because of the fact that you have to get maximum points, or you're going to see teams maybe be a little bit more passive in the first of the 3 games because even a win on penalties in certain cases could just get you over the hump. So it's going to be interesting to see how teams approach this. And of course, we have to note that in years past, Liga MX sides have been kind of 50-50 as far as how seriously they're taking this tournament as a whole, because obviously we have CONCACAF Champions Cup, and this is the start of Liga MX Apertura season. They're only about 3 games into that after having their preseason or off season from the last clausura. And so it's interesting to see which teams might use this as kind of a extended preseason, right, and not play full strength lineups every single game and try to advance fully in this tournament, or which teams are going to actually be going for it, because we've seen the big giants in Liga MX, I feel like, in the past couple of years not really go all out because of they hold other competitions, higher above this one, right, as far as Champions Cup, etc. But then their fans and the media have given them a lot of stick about it. So it's going to be interesting to see if they continue to kind of stick by these beliefs or actually still continue to go for it and change up a little bit, and if we'll see any of these top giants in Liga MX, such as Toluca, the previous champions, Club América, etc., actually go for it this year and try to make a deep run, because MLS has won the last 2 seasons with the Cruz and Miami the past 2 years. So I think from this first match day of the first phase, we're going to see potentially who's actually serious and who is kind of pretenders, who's using this as an extended preseason. So overall, this is, of course, for this first match day, these first 3 days from the 29th to the 31st, it's going to have to be a bunch of lineup checks, right? As far as if you're interested at all in the betting side of things, or just general expectations as a whole for any team, especially from Liga MX, and how seriously they're taking this tournament. You're going to have to wait for lineups and see just, how strong of these lineups they're going to have in these first matches, because that will set the precedent for the rest of this phase 1 group stage. Because if they go into this first game with a weaker lineup and they drop points or all points, it's going to be very hard to come back from that, because this is a very short phase 1, and that's just the thing. It's going to be very hard to predict these games without knowing these lineups beforehand, because a lot of times in previous years we've been kind of burnt on that as far as expectations go, predictions, without knowing really what the true intentions are of some of these Mexican clubs especially. So we know MLS clubs will mostly be taking this seriously, prioritizing it, especially since it's a bit of a lesser field with not all the MLS teams competing in it. So once again, we'll have to wait for lineups for the most part to make accurate predictions. But as a whole, I think Liga MX sides will be taking this a little bit more seriously this year, as far as the Giants go. But it's, once again, it's early on in their season, so they're still going to be on a bit of a handicap as far as just how fresh and match fit they are, match ready in the swing of things. So let's just get into the match day 1, July 29th through 31 matches for this first match day of phase 1, to get you everything you need to know for lineup expectations, from what we can tell, predictions, and some best bets and other updates. So to start off match day 1 of phase 1, it's actually one of the most enticing matchups of this entire tournament. Immediately we get the defending Leagues Cup champions against the defending Liga MX champions from the previous clausura, and it's the Cruz taking on Toluca. And the Cruz this season as a whole definitely haven't been as much of a dominant force. They've actually also been second best in a lot of matchups to the top opposition in the East, Miami, Union, Cincy. They haven't really beaten those clubs. They've had a decent amount of draws, but they've also lost more than they've won. Toluca, on the other side, seems to be carrying that same form from that historic clausura championship into this next season. They've started well in Liga MX. They did just lose to Tigres in their previous game, but had a really good comeback in that one. But they were coming off having to travel to LA recently to beat, where they beat Club América once again in the Campeón de Campeones kind of extra cup game against Club América. So they've just won more silverware there, and this is a stacked team. Alexis Vega, Paulinho, Helinho, and Marcel Ruiz, and the attacking depth here is really, really good. They're one of the best teams. I mean, probably the best team in Mexico, right? The champions, but across both leagues, definitely have to be one of the contenders for this Leagues Cup title. Should they take it, seriously, of course. And last year, it seemed like they did put out a full strength lineup. They weren't in the same peak form as they are now, but they still advanced to the knockout stages, I believe, where they lost to, I think it was the Dynamo or someone like that. And that's when Paulinho actually first joined. So they weren't fully, the chemistry wasn't fully there. That's when they were kind of building this kind of system that they have at the moment. And so right now they're in a much better state than they were in last year's Leagues Cup. And this should be a really fun match. Toluca has had a lot of travel, right? Like I mentioned, to LA recently for that extra cup game. And they have to come here, right? All these Liga MX sides, once again, are having to play all the games in America. So that's going to be, of course, another downside, because we've seen that really bothers them. That's really, the home field advantage is real, right? Either side of things, whether the Liga MX sides are hosting or the MLS sides are hosting. So the Crew, of course, one of the best teams in the league at home. And I expect this to have fireworks. But there is a bit of a, heat wave, of course, during this entire summer. The temperatures have been insane in the U.S. And here in Columbus, it's going to be no different. It should be pretty high 80s. And so I think at the moment as well, the form the Crew are in, they're just really not holding clean sheets. But, of course, that attack, that system under Nazi is one of the best tactically. So I think this should be a really good matchup. But I'm gonna take both to score in this one for our first best bet. It's gonna be a 2-legger, and I think neither is good enough to keep the other out of the back of the net. The Crew do have some finishing issues, but Toluca traveling, the Crew getting the home bump. The odds for this are pretty spot on, even as far as the result goes, and I think this one might have a little trouble getting over the line as far as being a total goal fest, but Toluca just can't be stopped, and the Crew at home should be able to give us one. This is going to be a really fun matchup to watch as a neutral. So I'm going to go for both to score, and we'll move on to the second leg of our first best bet. Moving on to one of Tuesday's games as well to close out the first best bet. It's LAFC taking on Mazatlán, and LAFC at home has been one of the best MLS teams all season long. They did just come off a pretty bad dud to a Timbers side that was injured. One of the few times they've been shut out as well at home. But I think they bounce back here, especially on the shorter rest, right? Because MLS and Liga MX, both leagues had matches on the weekend, whether that be Friday, Saturday. And, ahead of this phase one, ahead of this first group of games and the rest of the way, these teams are about to be playing a game every 3 days for like 4 games in 12 days. So this is the start of it. And Mazatlán has to travel. And Mazatlán has been one of the minnows in Liga MX the past, since they came into the league. And yeah, kind of just an average team at best. They haven't really made too many changes. They brought in Fabio Gomez, who's kind of been around a couple of teams recently with some decent goal scoring form. But this team as a whole just doesn't really jump off the page and struggles to score a lot. And LAFC, though, they are dealing defensively with some issues and maybe aren't as solid as far as holding clean sheets. At home, they obviously have a tried and true tactic and approach. And even though Dilrosun just left, he's going back to Club America after the loan. LAFC still, you're going to have Boanga, Ordaz, or Bobasi, but probably Ordaz, and then Martinez as the front three. And I think that this side is just more used to this grind of games, and Mazatlán, being realistic, isn't going to be one of, it's very unlikely for them to advance past the group stage. They're just not one of those teams that has enough depth, has enough talent, and LAFC here is going to want to get off to a hot start. This is a perfect opportunity, and so that's why I'm taking them on the money line to kind of get this to a great price. I think they're deserved favorites, and I think that it's very hard to get this team down at home multiple times in a row. So I think bouncing back from that Timbers defeat, they're pretty much healthy as far as that attack goes, and it should be pretty simple work against one of Liga MX's, bottom tier sides at the moment. Next up, it's Montreal hosting Club León over in Canada, and neither of these sides are looking good whatsoever in their respective leagues. Obviously, the season just started for León, but kind of a fall from grace after a fantastic clausura last season. Still have James Rodriguez, of course. That's the star there. But lost, I think, too much firepower, especially Cadiz, who went over to Pachuca now. And that roster is just a little bit worse off. And I just don't think they're going to be competing in Liga MX specifically. But this is a very, this is a toss-up as far as the result goes, because once again, Montreal in Leagues Cup recently, despite being terrible in the league the past couple of years, has actually been kind of decent as far as performing at home, since they do get the home games. All the Mexican sides have to travel, and this is a pretty far travel, right, all the way up to Canada. But Montreal, regardless, it's been the Owusu show. I think if you were to have any value as far as if you wanted to bet this game, you'd have to take Owusu to score, because this guy has been absolutely unbelievable. He literally scores every game at this rate for like the past 10 games, if not a brace. So he's really been their only hope as far as keeping games competitive, and they are coming off a win at New England recently with just a little bit of extra rest compared to León. So this is a toss-up. It's two pretty bad teams. The best player on the field belongs to León, but it's also a team I feel like in transition here that's not going to have the same consistency and results as they did in the back half of last season. So it's one that's hard to call. I can definitely see this one going to penalties, but at the same time, I once again, there's this feeling in me that because of the way this format goes, and if teams are really serious about advancing in this tournament, then you have to push to the limits and avoid dropping any points when possible. So I think León will just get by Montreal, whether that be in penalties or in normal time. I'm not sure. But for now, I'm going to go for a 2-1 León win. Moving on, it's NYCFC hosting Puebla, and it's an average MLS side taking on a pretty poor Liga MX side, one that's been pretty poor for the past several seasons, and it really hasn't improved all that much. And in this one, I'm taking the under 3 as our second best bet, and this is going to be the last best bet for the first match day as far as the video is concerned. And I'll definitely have more plays out as for Wednesday and Thursday's matches for this first match day. But as far as the first day, right, Tuesday, that's all I'm going to be on. And any following plays will, of course, be posted on Twitter, as once again, it's going to be very hard to... I don't want to fire away on bets without knowing too many of these lineups ahead of time, and how just do not want to get burned by teams who may not be taking this tournament fully serious as far as the rosters go. So, but I think in this case here with these two teams, with the under 3, I think there's not many surprises that can be thrown our way as far as the lineups go, and I'm willing to take my chances against a pretty poor Puebla side, one that can still make things competitive and grindy against this NYC side that's not actually going to be playing at Yankee Stadium that I have listed here. It's actually going to be at the Red Bulls home in Harrison, and it's going to be very, very hot there. It's going to be high 90s, maybe cool down just a tad bit by game time, but that's still going to be very, very hot. And NYC having to travel from Dallas recently, where they did put up 4, and win with an Alonso Martinez hat trick. But still, big travel, continuously hot weather. Puebla having to travel too, and so it's not really technically a home game for NYC, even though they'll be in the area where the Red Bulls play in New Jersey. And once again, Alonso Martinez and Maximo Morales really the only options in this NYC team, but we've seen NYC in previous Leagues Cup against pretty poor Liga MX sides such as Querétaro and Mazatlán, I believe maybe. And they've just really put in poor performances. It's been really competitive. This is an average side through and through. And against these kind of minnows in Liga MX, I think usually we see kind of more grindier games with not too many opportunities. And I'm willing to bite the bullet and get that push protection on the under 3. I think it's a great line. And I don't really see Puebla being all that competitive as far as, getting too many chances in this game. But this shouldn't be, a straightforward, free-flowing kind of dominant victory from NYC. So I'm going to go for an NYC 1 or 2-0 win. But yeah, once again, Puebla just doesn't offer much. And continuously we've seen these bottom half to really bad sides in Liga MX, even against middle-of-the-pack MLS teams, just not being able to really do too much damage. And when they do, they usually get their one goal and sit back. And so if they have any chance in this game, it'll be through those kinds of tactics, those kind of time-wasting stuff. So once again, shouldn't see too many fireworks in this one. NYC here not really truly in a home environment, and it's going to be very, very hot with these games coming very fast and thick. So I'm going to take the under 3 in this game, probably favoring NYC. Next up, it's the Dynamo hosting Tigres. And Tigres have started this new season off with 2 wins of 2. Meanwhile, the Dynamo, their weekend game against the Galaxy was postponed. So they've had a little bit of extra rest. But this Dynamo side, once again, has not been overly good whatsoever at home or this season. And this Tigres side is a little bit bruised, a little older. Their new coach, of course, the former player, has kind of taken over things, but not as dominant. They have some good stars there, but it hasn't really ever been put together recently. Also with Gignac not there anymore, it's not really been fully put together. They haven't done anything as far as winning one of the Liga MX titles in recent seasons. And so here, though, traveling to Houston, it's going to be hot, of course, and Houston is pretty healthy as far as that attack goes. I can see this one being a sneakily high-scoring game. Tigres, of course, just coming off putting 4 past Toluca, where Toluca actually almost came back, but it was 4-3 to Tigres. And once again, I feel like this is it's hard to get a gauge on this Tigres team without knowing what the lineup's going to be ahead of time, and just once again how they're going to approach this tournament. Because I think they have some good young talent, but the Dynamo, once again, if you haven't followed along this season, if you're new on the channel, the Dynamo have just been a team that I personally haven't been able to read, and they just, whatever the expectation is, they fully perform against that. Whether they're favorites, not favorites, it's always the opposite. And so Tigres here getting basically about even odds to win, even though this is at the Dynamo's home. But the Dynamo, once again, haven't been good at home. And Ponce dealing with a bit of an injury. They're number 9. And that's one to also watch out for. So it's hard to really predict this one. But I think Tigres probably gets by 2-1. To close out Tuesday's slate of this Matchday 1, it's San Diego hosting Pachuca. And San Diego first in the West in MLS, and Pachuca first through 3 games in Liga MX. They've won all 3 games, and that's honestly a shock to me. They've beaten Monterrey, and I think that's their standout win, and then beat a couple of lower tier sides, if memory serves me correctly, including Mazatlán. But it's surprising to me because I kind of expected them to fall off a little bit. Obviously, it's early days in the season, but I expected them to fall off a little bit because, of course, they lost their main man up top, Solomon Rondon, to Oviedo in La Liga, and then also John Kennedy, who was on loan from the Brazilian league, went back to Fluminense. So that's a lot of star power gone. Adrisi as well, dealing with an injury. He's expected to be back for this tournament, but he obviously hasn't gotten any game time yet. And so I wouldn't expect him to start here. And so that's a lot of talent out. Of course, they signed Cadiz from León to replace Rondon, and that's a really good player there to swap for. So that's the only reason that I think they've been, or a big reason why they've been handling the business so far. But yeah, it's a sneakily good team. I think they have a good attack when it's fully healthy on paper, but at the moment I'm not really sure what to expect as far as this game and the lineup goes. If Idrisi comes back, that's definitely a huge boost. But the San Diego team has been really poor defensively recently. Of course, just beat Nashville, but still dealing with a lot of injuries on that back line. McNair literally subbed on for 1 minute last game, but that back line's been decimated. Godoy coming back for about a 30-minute appearance last game. That was a huge deal for this midfield, which is, of course, the strongest part of the San Diego side. But that number 9, since Iloski left, has been a big talking point, and it's going to be very hard to replace. It seems like they're not really going out and signing a 9 and waiting on Ingvartsen to get back to health, and they're going to probably have to play someone in a false 9 continuously, and so that might hamper their full potential if they can't really get a number 9 going or healthy. But this, as far as this game goes, I think it could be a sneakily high-scoring game. San Diego still finds way to score goals, but recently, of course, that back line has been very, very young and inexperienced. The chemistry, they've been swapping goalies due to injury. And once again, I think it's more on Pachuca's end as far as how they take this tournament, if this lineup can be, how strong this lineup can be and how much they can contribute. But San Diego at home has largely been a surefire bet, a surefire win. But there's just too much going on with this team as far as the injuries go for me to be confident. So for me, if I were to potentially make an ad in this game, as far as the bet goes, it would have to be the over. But right now, have to stay off. I don't like where the lineups are trending. But if I do like it enough, I think that's the only way I would expect this way to go. But as far as the result goes, it might be a little bit hard to call. I think something like a 1-1 going to penalties or something is something I definitely wouldn't be surprised by. We move on to day 2 of match day 1, which will be on Wednesday. This is the start of another 6 games, and it'll be Miami hosting Atlas. Miami, of course, having Messi and Alba suspended for that last Cincy game, so they're going to be rested, right? Since they missed out on that All-Star game and then got suspended. They get to stay at home. Atlas, meanwhile, honestly, from the back end of the Clausura last season and now, they've been an attacking force. Results aside, they have been putting in the goals on their end, especially through Drew Davic. He's been an unbelievable player for them. And a couple of other pretty decent attacking pieces. Like this team kind of is a bit all gas, no brakes. We've seen a lot of really crooked score lines, regardless of if it's gone in their favor or not. It's just been very high scoring games for the most part. And Miami has been a bit more controlled this year, but in Leagues Cup, I know they're going to want to put on a show. It's literally you're literally six wins or 6 games, right? Just including the knockouts from a trophy, because it's only 3 phase or group stage games and then 3 games in the knockouts should you advance to the final. So I think they're going to want to put on a show. They're going to obviously play at home. They've been obviously electric there, and I think this is one that has to be an over. Miami honestly, I mean, this we could see an upset. I mean, it wouldn't shock me. Miami, although they've been more controlled, still defensively look old. Um, but we've seen Messi and Miami perform well against the, once again, average to not against the non-Giants in Liga MX. I think they shouldn't have too much trouble, even if they concede a goal here or there, which they're a little bit more prone to doing. So I'm gonna go for a Miami win here, but Atlas certainly can contribute on their end. And once again, I haven't made any best bets without lineups for Wednesday or Thursday's matches of Matchday 1, but this is one, once again, that should lineups be right, this is one that I expect goals in. I'm going to call this one Miami 3-1. Next up, it's Atlanta hosting Necaxa, and Atlanta has been awful all season despite their bunch of signings, breaking the transfer record for Latte Lath. The attack just hasn't clicked. The wins haven't been there. I mean, just look at that record. That's honestly egregious. And all 4 wins have been at home. Meanwhile, for Necaxa, had a very strong clausura, one of the surprising teams of that half of the season last year. And going into this season, I wouldn't say expectations are as high because they lost the key player in Paradela, who went to Cruz Azul. And he's a really good creative player, attacking player. Honestly, kept just about everyone else from what I can tell from the looks of it. And of course, Cambindo and Palavencia are going to be the 2 main guys there. Cambindo is very hard to deal with as a striker. And so far, they've still been putting on a show as far as their end of attacking, right? Kind of split results to start this Apertura, but it could still be a wild card, whether that be in this tournament or Liga MX going forward. And against an Atlanta team that just hasn't been consistent, I mean, this is anyone's guess. And it'll just depend on what Necaxa brings out as far as a lineup. But I think they can definitely contest for the win here or force penalties. And, there's just not much to like about this Atlanta side. So I'm going to call this one a sneaky Necaxa win, maybe on penalties. Next up, Orlando hosts PUMAS. And Orlando coming back to win against the Crew recently, turning around a really bad run of form. So that's a big win for this Orlando side. That is honestly relatively healthy, but they've had a bit of a crisis as far as the lineup goes because Muriel has really fallen off from the first half of the season, and that's kind of the forcing him in the lineup has kind of taken a bit from everyone else in this attacking four as far as where they like to play best and just the finishing as a whole. But coming off a big win, they obviously get to host this one. Pumas has to travel, and Pumas, of course, the big signings with Keylor Navas as the keeper. They just won their last Liga MX match after losing the first 2 with Navas in net, holding the clean sheet. And then also signing Pedro Vite from the Whitecaps, which was a huge cross-league transfer. And he's gotten a couple of games and run with them. So expect him to feature here. That's going to be another storyline. You also have Carrasquilla, who came from the Dynamo midway through last season. And so a couple of MLS players going over to Liga MX and now facing, going to be facing MLS sides once again. So that's some interesting storylines. But this Pumas team as a whole, I think, is kind of an average roster, just have not delivered, right? They lost their star player to Anderlecht. And yeah, just honestly, another one of those kind of, just outside the kind of giant status at the moment as far as the inconsistent results the past decade or so. And, definitely could be an evenly contested match. But once again, this was a Puma side that last year scraped through a group with Monterrey and Austin. So I think it's anyone's guess once again here. Orlando has been pretty strong at home, but at the moment, this attack hasn't been as free-flowing as, just a little bit earlier in the season. But maybe that win helps them a lot, but this is going to still be an evenly contested match that I think goes to penalties. Next up, it's Minnesota United hosting Querétaro. And Querétaro dead last in Liga MX to start the season. It's their 75th anniversary. They have this new logo, right? And that's not really saving them just because the celebrations there. This team is continuously one of the worst in Liga MX. The lineup just, the budget, the lineup is very poor. And they have caused a little bit of ruckus in previous Leagues Cup. Just making games tight. They'll sit back. And Minnesota is a team that, of course, loves to sit back, loves to give teams possession. But I don't think Querétaro is going to be doing any of that. So they'll just invite Minnesota to possess the ball. And in certain situations where Minnesota has had to break teams down and kind of get out of their shell and had to kind of have a taste of their own medicine, I think they've been kind of 50-50 as far as the performances go and the efficiency goes. They're, of course, the highest rated team as far as the percentage of set pieces they take and the long throw-ins. Like they play a very ugly style at times, but they maximize every opportunity they get that's not in open play. So there's a lot of ways this team can beat you. They're going to be pretty much healthy, and at home I think they're just going to be too much for Querétaro. I just don't think this team offers much in attack. They'll probably try and sit back a lot, but Minnesota should get the job done, like something like 2-0. Next up, it's RSL hosting Club América. Club América has to go to altitude here and face off against a sneakily rising RSL side, which has been picking up a fair amount of wins and climbed up to the play-in spots in the West. They're sitting in 8th in the West. Meanwhile, Club América, not the best start to this Apertura after, of course, losing in the final of the Clausura playoffs to Toluca. 1 win, 2 draws, including a loss as well in that Campeón de Campeones against Toluca just a week ago or so. And yeah, they've picked up a lot of players from opposing clubs, from Cruz Azul, from Toluca. They picked up Violante, and another player from Cruz, Violante from Toluca, and then one player from Cruz Azul that slips my mind right now. But yeah, a little bit spoiled as far as the depth goes, but that can be a problem at times when the coach is not making the right lineup decisions as far as which players work well together. But Henry Martin has gotten some running time here in the past game or two, which is good. Ryan Rodriguez, I'd really love to see more of Davila, because I think he was really key for them in the Apertura, I think it was, of last season. And then I don't know if he just fell out of favor or not, but I mean, I think personally he was delivering as far as that striker role goes. But definitely spoiled for depth, but at the moment, just not really. The chemistry hasn't been piecing it together. Dilrosun, of course, coming back from his LAFC loan, like we mentioned. And, is he going to be put right in? Who knows? But that's another option there. RSL, of course, they signed Olatunji from, I believe it was Sparta Prague, if I'm not mistaken, as one of their DPs. So that's a big number 9 signing, and we'll see if he's ready to go for Leagues Cup. And that's another thing to monitor. So it's hard to know without lineups, but Club América surely has to be favored here, regardless of altitude or travel. They have the much stronger team, but RSL is one of the hottest teams in MLS at the moment, so it's hard to put them away at home, especially. Club América, of course, probably used to that altitude anyways, but yeah, this could be a sneakily tight game because Club América's attack hasn't been all that, free-flowing at the moment, but I'm still going to favor them to win, sneak out of, sandy Utah with the victory. To close out Wednesday's slate, it's the Timbers hosting Atlético San Luis. The Timbers are sitting pretty comfortable in 5th in the West right now. They've been getting by through some injuries, with Anthony still kind of on his way back. He was expected back at the end of this month, but we are here at the end of the month, and still no sub appearances. He's kind of been working on the side a little bit in the past, like last week, and they did just get a pretty good win on the road at LAFC, really grinding out a result there. but the attacking metrics just haven't been in favor of them. They've been kind of overperforming as far as the results go. And yeah, once again, not a full strength lineup. Da Costa did come back last game. And San Luis, though, just kind of, once again, a middle of the pack team, really inconsistent. And I think they've lost kind of one or two of their best players in the past couple of years. So they do have João Pedro, who's come in and really taken that number 9 role immediately this season, scoring a couple of goals. So that's a threat there. But the Timbers at home have just been, honestly, almost unbeatable. But this could be, I think this kind of might be a lower scoring game. Atletico San Luis doesn't really scare me too much as far as that attack goes. And the Timbers at the moment, like I said, just not, when they are allowed to get into space and they have all those options, yes. But at the moment, none of that's happening. They've had to be a little bit more professional, like out of their preferred style, and a little bit more cautious and controlled. And so we've seen some lower scoring games on their end. But I'm going to take them still to just get by Atletico San Luis 1-0. So now we're into day 3 of Matchday 1, Thursday, with another 6 games. And we start with Cincinnati versus Monterrey, which is a pretty enticing matchup. Monterrey tipped to be one of the contenders for this Apertura title. They've started off decently strong with 2 wins and a loss, bouncing back from an opening day loss to Pachuca 3-0 with back-to-back wins now against San Luis and Atlas. And Cincinnati sitting second in the East, just beating Miami at home recently. Had the return game once again against Miami just this previous game, and tied 0-0 against the Messi-less Miami on the road, but still a pretty good tie. And felt like they were cheated out of a win because they scored a late goal, but was taken back. So a pretty good, of course, a great season so far for Cincinnati. But Denke's been injured. He's been injured for a couple weeks now, and that was kind of his timeline. So we'll see if he can return for Leagues Cup. But honestly, no clear updates yet. And that's a big loss because you also have had Kubo out for so long. And, with a lack of striker options, Valenzuela or one of those other guys lower on the depth chart like Santos or Barrett is going to have to step up. And in a tournament setting like this where you need maximum points, and you start off against an opponent like this, it doesn't really bode too well. But Cincinnati at home, of course, is going to get this bump. Monterrey, they have the firepower. Berterame, Canales, he's healthy, and all things run through him as far as that attack goes. Obviously, Sergio Ramos joining the club. But of course, Monterrey as well, coming off Club World Cup, having to travel here. Who knows how that might affect them as far as how they approach this tournament, because they have been eliminated early last year, but I feel like they should be taking a little bit more seriously this year because of that. They don't want to be embarrassed, but this is a tough matchup for both sides, and as of now, I think without knowing lineups, especially from Monterrey's end, it's hard to get a gauge on who can get on top here, but I think it's going to be tightly contested. And yeah, we'll see. I think this one has the potential to go to penalties. Moving on, it's Charlotte hosting Juárez. And Charlotte has had most of its success at home this season. And, as you can see by that record, not many draws. It's been one way or the other, one-way traffic. And recently they've been in good form, getting a lot of wins at home against admittedly lower tier Eastern Conference teams. And this is another one of those situations where you can kind of compare to, because they're facing Juárez, which is an average-ish side in Liga MX. They haven't the start of the season great, right? They're sitting, second to last. But I think that's not actually indicative of this team as a whole, and maybe the outlook as far as what this team can be. I think so far, despite the 2 draws and a loss, they've been really competitive. They haven't been pushovers whatsoever, and they faced 2 of the giants in the league with Club América and Tigres. They got a 1-1 draw against Club América at home, only a 1-0 loss at Tigres, and then they came back once again for another 1-1 draw at Tijuana. Playing at Tijuana is very hard for any team because they play on that turf, which they're very used to. So I just don't think this team is a pushover, and Charlotte as well just doesn't inspire too much confidence in me as far as like being this dominant team on the ball at home. Obviously, they do get the home results, but that once again is against lower tier opposition. It's usually like a 2-0, 1-0, 2-0 type of game every time. But I think Juárez is going to be a little bit more defensively sound than Charlotte might be prepared for. And Charlotte has had its own kind of slip up as far as defensively. They haven't been really that kind of standalone team or leading the pack as far as the defensive metrics either, whether that be home or away. So I think this is going to be a sneakily tough matchup for Charlotte, even though they are at home. But I'm going to lean towards this being a lower scoring game. And I'm going to call this one either a 1-0 win for Charlotte or 1-1 again. I just think Juárez can be competitive, but I don't think there are going to be many goals in this one, whichever way you spin it. Next up, it's the Red Bulls hosting Chivas. And these are two kind of staple clubs in each league facing off against each other. Red Bulls have been, largely inconsistent. They're sitting 10th in the East. And Chivas, just once again, I think the prospect on this season is, I don't think there should be too many high expectations. This roster just hasn't changed too much. You still have Pulido, who's been, back, Alvarado, Cade Cowell. And there's just not much, top end talent. The depth just isn't there. And yeah, so I think these two teams are pretty even at the moment. You have Forsberg and Choupo-Moting for the Red Bulls. But this Red Bulls defense as well has just been really poor recently and prone to giving up goals. So I'm not really sure who should be favored in this matchup. I think it's going to be another tight one, lower scoring, and the heat here can take an effect as well. It's going to be taking its effect on Tuesday, but this is a Thursday game. We'll see how, if the weather changes at all. But once again, this summer has just been, we saw it in the Club World Cup too. I mean, it's just really bad conditions for players who aren't really used to them, especially coming here from outside the USA. So for a team like Chivas from Mexico, who knows how they'll adapt? Who knows, especially, if they even put out a weaker lineup at all, because, we'll see how seriously they take this. Last year they had the kind of California group, and now they're kind of going to be a little bit all over the place as far as who they're facing. So, this is one I kind of don't have a lean in or a good grasp on. But I just don't think there will be too many goals. Red Bulls being at home should get that bump, of course, but once again, just not a team I'm very high on. Move over to Colorado, the Rapids hosting Santos, and Colorado is just in a bit of a rut right now, and that's especially away from home. At home, they've picked up some pretty good results recently, especially against the Whitecaps, and the attack has been just a little bit better. Getting Navarro and Mihailovic a little bit more active, playing a little bit more of that counter-attacking style that got them into some pretty good positions last season. But as a whole, it's just been pretty inconsistent from the Rapids. Santos as well, I think was the worst team in Clausura last season. And here maybe just a little bit more competitive of a roster this season. But still, you really have only Lozano and Dahome as kind of those main attacking options, and it's just not a team that's going to go be one of those contenders to make it out of this entire tournament, even if they maybe make a couple of teams play a couple of teams competitively and make them slip up. I just don't think they're going to get nowhere near the maximum amount of points. So the Rapids have this altitude advantage. Santos has to travel. And I think we saw with the Rapids last season, I think they beat León and another team at home to progress. So, actually they lost to Toluca. But regardless, I think they should be the clear favorites here. Santos, the firepower just isn't there, but and Stefan has been putting in some crazy performances. Even though they just lost to the Union, he saved them from conceding about 7+ goals in that one. He's been playing, he's been standing on his head and has been an unbelievable player. But Atencio picked up an injury in that Union match, so that's another key loss in that defensive midfield. And so even though I don't like the Rapids defensively at home here, I do have to favor them just a bit. So I'm going to go for a 2-1 Colorado win. Moving on to one of the final matches of Matchday 1 on the night slate on Thursday. It's a rematch of a Champions Cup battle earlier this season with the Sounders hosting Cruz Azul. And Cruz Azul got the better of the Sounders in their 2-leg tie in Champions Cup knockouts. And Sounders here, once again, defensively recently they've been been slipping up a lot. Their games have been a little bit more higher scoring. And now they just lost Jordan Morris once again, who just constantly gets re-injured, or at least someone does on this team as a whole. And Stefan Fry still working his way back from that nasty head injury concussion. So we'll see if he's good to go at all for this tournament, but I wouldn't expect him for this game. And then you also have Rothrock, who suffered a wrist injury. So although this team has the attacking depth to deal with such things and is just used to playing so many tournaments, they've been one of the key flag bearers as far as representing this league in as many tournaments as possible on the continent. And we're obviously just in the Club World Cup. Despite all that and their depth, Cruz Azul just, once again, it seems like they reloaded a little bit as far as a couple of pickups they made, and seem to have just as much, if not better, depth at the moment. And so I think this, once again, should probably be a bit of a lower scoring game, as we've seen between these two sides recently, in Seattle specifically, which is where this is going to be. But once again, yeah, it's all about Cruz Azul's approach before making a true prediction, and we'll see what type of lineup they bring out. But they're going to be on short rest, having to travel, so probably expect rotation for them, and of course many of these Liga MX sides, unfortunately, maybe for this first game. But yeah, on paper, I still think Cruz Azul should have the slight edge, despite the fact the Sounders will be at home. And this is one that can definitely be going to penalties. To close out match day 1 on Thursday, the final match will be LA Galaxy hosting Tijuana. And the Galaxy are dealing with a couple of injuries here with Gabriel Peck and Yoshida. And those are two big losses, especially Peck, because if they don't have both wingers available, then this attack really, really is not good to watch. And Ricky Puig has been listed on the lineup, on the roster for this Galaxy team, who's still recovering from an ACL injury. And so the fact that he's been listed is caused a little bit of chatter about if he's actually going to be back early enough in this tournament in this next week or so, or going forward if they were to advance to the knockouts. But I just don't think that's likely for this Galaxy team. I think getting, even 2 wins out of the 3 matches is a bit of a stretch. And this Tijuana side, honestly, I don't think they're much of a pushover. They definitely have much worse splits away from home because they have that turf like we talked about. But I think getting rid of the previous coach was fantastic. There was just too much drama with him. They were one of the worst teams towards the end of last season, I think. But they did reload a little bit, getting Vitinho from San Luis. And then they also have the wonder kid in Mora, who of course played for Mexico, got an assist in the Gold Cup semifinal, I believe, and has just been a regular starter for this team as well, and he's a great talent. So that's another kind of storyline to watch if he can continue to perform at 16. And this attack is kind of sneakily okay. But away from home is just what kind of worries me. Last year when they went up against LAFC, they got completely bounced. But it is a bit of a new look team, new coach, and so I don't really know what the full expectation should be of this Tijuana team. But LA Galaxy, of course, as you can see, have won just one of 24 games at the moment in MLS, And even though a couple of those 3 were recent and at home, I think this one is also a coin flip, especially if Peck doesn't play. It could get very, very ugly very fast for the Galaxy. So as of now, it's hard to call, but I think Tijuana makes a match out of this and at least gets a draw and could take it to penalties. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Be sure to like this video down below and subscribe to the channel once again if you haven't already. I'll be out with another video ahead of match day 2 of this group stage of Leagues Cup. The games are going to be coming very fast between the first match day, second, third. So I'll try to get that out, basically hopefully on Thursday ahead of the start of match day 2 on Friday. So be on the lookout for that. And of course, with any best bets, if you're interested in those, any additional ones for match day 1 will be out on Twitter once we learn more about lineups, whether that be Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday for this first slate of games. But hopefully you're as interested as I am in this Leagues Cup. I think it's going to be a much better format, and we should get a lot more intriguing matchups across these 2 leagues battling it out for this trophy in the next month. So be sure to follow along, and I'll see you all in the next video.